Hi, it's Katrina. Today I'm exploring some crazy artifacts from around the world that have no business existing. Some of them were found in weird places, and others are just very out of place. But are they proof of advanced cultures and ancient aliens? I'll explain as best I can, and then you can be the judge. Sunken Technology. Off the coast of Granada are some extremely unusual sculptures sitting at the bottom of the ocean. One of the sculptures is of a man seated at a typewriter, frozen in time with his fingers hovering above the keys. The sculpture is known as the Newspaper Man, and it's sitting at the bottom of Molyneux Bay. The sculpture isn't ancient, although it certainly looks old. It was submerged by its creator, Jason DeCare Taylor, in 2006 when he opened the Granada Underwater Sculpture Park. The Newspaper Man is made from concrete and doesn't represent forgotten ancient technology, but a sunken discovery off the coast of Greece does. 2,000 years ago, the earliest known computer sank to the bottom of the Aegean Sea. It was found off the coast of Antikythera, a Greek island, about a century ago. An archaeologist went for a dive and found the wreckage of a very, very old boat. The archaeologist sifted through objects dispersed across the seabed when the ancient ship sank. The objects included vases, pots, a bronze statue, and pieces of jewelry. It was the typical cool rubble you'd expect to find in a shipwreck. But there was also a computer. It's known as the Antikythera mechanism, something you've probably heard of a million times if you've been a longtime viewer of this channel. If that's the case, don't click away just yet. I'm going to reveal some insights about this artifact that are new. An artifact that, quite frankly, shouldn't exist. The Antikythera mechanism consists of gears and dials jammed into a wooden box. The mechanism looks like the inner workings of a grandfather clock, only rusted and green from being at the bottom of the ocean. At first glance, it doesn't look that impressive. So what? The Greeks were able to make some gears. Big deal. Could it really have been that difficult? Looking closer, experts have found that, yes, it would have been extremely difficult. Underneath that crusty green gunk that covers the mechanism are at least 24 different gears, each one laid perfectly on top of the other. The gears were calibrated with such precision that a master Swiss watchmaker would be impressed. The gears were created in a way that wasn't seen again until about 400 years ago. What I'm trying to say is that the technology of the mechanism has no business being from ancient Greece. Such technology wasn't invented until the 16th century, which was over 1,600 years after the mechanism sank to the bottom of the sea. The existence of the mechanism is so surprising that it's hard to guess how it was made or where the tech came from. But what was it made for? That's a question that's been answered, although it took scientists a really long time to do so. In 1959, Derek J. DeSoya Price from Princeton University conducted a thorough analysis of the contraption. He studied the gears in a way that no other scientist had done before. He concluded that the mechanism was used to predict the position of planets and stars in the sky. The mechanism wasn't a clock, as many had assumed. Well, it was a kind of clock, but for cosmic objects. It was a real computer that could track the movement of planets. Simply put in some variables and the computer did the rest. Since the original assessment, technology has advanced a lot. Recently, researchers found text written on parts of the mechanism that were previously unseen. It turned out that the text was an instruction manual saying how to use the device. This shocked researchers, especially since the text is so tiny. The small characters look as if they were added to the mechanism using a laser beam. But that's impossible, right? Surely the Greeks didn't have laser technology. But then again, nobody thought they had computers either. The Sumerian Nokia. 5,000 years ago, the ancient Sumerians were walking around with bulky brick cell phones attached to their hips and dorky phone holders. If you were around in the 90s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Only this wasn't the 90s. It was 3,000 years before Christ. This is the Sumerian Nokia, a cellular phone that was allegedly discovered in Austria of all places. The initial story claimed the phone to be 800 years old, and it was found during an excavation. However, there were other reports that it came from the 13th century BC, or that it was from the earliest days of cuneiform writing. The script on the phone did appear to be Sumerian, with the buttons being covered in weird symbols instead of our types of numbers and letters. So, could the Sumerians have been the original CEOs of Nokia? I like the idea as the premise for a weird sci-fi movie, but sadly it's not the reality of the situation. The Sumerian Nokia, also known as the Babylonian, is a hoax. It is not an intergalactic controversy at all, but rather the creation of a German sculptor named Karl Weingartner. He made the object out of clay in 2012. The disappointing truth of the Babylonian cell phone is a great reminder to not always trust the crazy things you see on the internet. And now for a quick break, because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Frank McCann and Richie Luxury. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. We wouldn't be here without you guys. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. The Greek laptop. We've already established that the Greeks had computers. They didn't have computers to play Fortnite on, but they could track objects in the solar system. Some might say that was even more impressive. But could the Greeks have had laptops as well? This is a statue of a woman who appears to be staring at a screen. This sculpture was carved beautifully about 2,100 years ago. The woman portrayed is wearing classic Greek attire with what appears to be golden bracelets around her wrists and her upper arms. The carving is officially titled Grave Naiskos of an Enthroned Woman with an Attendant. The person in front of her is the enthroned woman's attendant, a young individual holding open a laptop with obvious USB ports. Maybe the laptop could be misconstrued as something else, but the USB ports are extremely suspicious. The top of the laptop is lifted at a 90-degree angle, just like yours is right now if you're watching this video on a laptop. I don't think I need to continue with the similarities because you can see them with your own two eyes. But what's really happening here? Yet again, archaeologists are saying the mystery object is nothing but a mirror. Either a mirror or a jewelry box. The official explanation is that the attendant is presenting the mystery woman on her throne with a box full of jewels. The upper part of the box is a mirror so that the woman can see herself as she tries on different pieces. It does make sense, but what about the thinness of the box and the placement of the USB ports? The two holes may have originally held metal pins, which connected another piece of marble to the sculpture. That piece is missing though. As for the thinness of the alleged jewelry box, Getty Collection explained that the sculpture wasn't meant to be ultra-realistic. The Getty Museum doesn't suspect there is anything overly unusual about the sculpture. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. The finger. In the 1980s, a landowner came across a fossilized human finger on their property, and the finger is supposedly from the Cretaceous period. That means that whoever this little digit belonged to lived at a time when beastly dinosaurs like T-Rex and Brontosaurus still roamed the earth. It's a big accusation with a small bit of proof and a handful of plot holes. According to the original story, the finger was found while gravel for new roads was being quarried on the landowner's property. Amidst the dirt and limestone chunks came what you can see from this picture, which looks exactly like a human finger, only it's fossilized or petrified in stone. For years, the finger captivated people, but there was never enough technology to confirm that it came from over 66 million years ago. The Creation Evidence Museum got a hold of the finger and kept it in their collection. Just recently, the museum used advanced CT scanning technologies to look inside the finger. The CT scans show dark areas inside the finger, representing bone marrow. So, amazingly, the tests seem to prove that the artifact is a real human finger. If you know much about fossilization in general, you can likely see a few issues with the finger right away. The first issue is that soft tissue doesn't typically fossilize, yet the finger is obviously covered in its original skin. You can even see the fingernail perfectly. The second issue is that science and evolution claim that there were no humans living alongside dinosaurs. But what if science is wrong? Maybe humans did live alongside dinosaurs. Maybe our forgotten ancestors were riding around on the backs of duck-billed dinos and straddling horses the size of houses. But the truth is probably not, even though it's a fun idea. The Hidden Character Stone. The Hidden Character Stone was discovered purely by accident in 2002. The stone isn't exactly an artifact in the sense that you can pick it up and hold it. It's a massive stone that's part of the earth. The chunk of rock is about 270 million years old. And the reason it's so incredible is that there are faded Chinese characters carved into it. Wait, am I suggesting that the characters are 270 million years old? I sure am, though it might not be true. To fully understand, I'll take you through the discovery and analysis step by step. Then you can decide if the stone is proof that humans lived before dinosaurs. In 2002, the Dogu International Photography Exposition recommended an isolated area of Jiangbu for a political photo shoot. This was in Guizhou, China. The photo shoot went fine. Then the area was cleaned afterward by a crew. The cleaning crew then accidentally came across a stone with obviously ancient Chinese characters inscribed on it. The stone is over 10 feet tall and more than 20 feet wide. It's an area that hadn't been touched by human hands for centuries prior to the photo shoot. When experts from the Guizhou University of Technology investigated the stone the following year, they were able to date the limestone. The dating was confirmed by paleontological fossils peppered throughout the rock. They found out that this thing is older than the dinosaurs. It's almost 300 million years old. Before I give you the shocking message that's written in the stone, there's one other part of the investigation I should tell you about. Scientists from the university found the stone to be unaltered by any artificial means. The limestone has been naturally weathered, but there is no trace of artificial shaping or etching. What this means is that, as far as the evidence shows, the Chinese characters formed naturally through erosion. They weren't carved by anyone. The characters say, "Communist Party of China perish." I don't know about you, but that feels like an extremely specific message to have formed naturally on a rock in China. It's a coincidence of such magnitude that it can't possibly be real. But it is, just look at the photos. This is big news in China, with the site having been turned into a tourist destination. In this case, I think someone just recently carved those words on an old rock. What do you think? The Sapata Footprint. In New Mexico, there is a fossilized footprint that was made by someone roughly 290 million years ago. It's known as the Sapata Footprint. And if it's real, it is physical proof that humans were walking barefoot prior to the Great Dying. Great Dying? What in the world is that? It was one of the most brutal extinction events this planet has ever seen. About 252 million years ago, something unknown happened that caused 57% of all biological families to go extinct. 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species died, along with 81% of marine species. It was the biggest of all the mass extinction events. And from the ashes of devastation came the Triassic period and the rise of the dinosaurs. 40 million years earlier, the Sapata Footprint was made. At the time, there was only a single continent on the planet. Pangaea was the only landmass, with the rest of the world being an endless ocean. Wouldn't that be cool if humans had evolved at a time when there was only a single continent? You would be able to take a road trip from New Zealand, which was at the southern tip of Pangaea, up through Australia, Antarctica, India, Africa, Canada, while also passing through Greenland, Russia, Mongolia. The trip would end in the North Pole, which during the age of Pangaea was near the northernmost tip of China. The world was a seriously different place, filled with creatures that would look like alien monsters to you and I. If the footprint is to be believed, it was also a time when human beings existed. Or maybe some other humanoid species was wandering around on two legs. We can't be sure. The footprint was found by a hunter who happened to be friends with an archaeologist by the name of Don Shoki. A team of experts descended on the footprint and attempted to confirm its authenticity. However, the footprint was on somebody's land, and that person wasn't happy with scientists messing around on their property. The researchers were kicked out, and the footprint was destroyed by the cranky landowner. Thankfully, though, photographs of the footprint have survived. You can see the shape of a human-like foot in the pictures, and the indents from toes. It looks 100% like a barefoot human walked across the muck almost 300 million years ago. I'm starting to wonder if human civilization has existed many times in the history of the planet. The Belgian Dodecahedron. In Belgium, an amateur archaeologist was searching for treasure with a metal detector when he discovered something beyond weird. He found a rare piece from a Roman artifact that drives scientists crazy. The Roman artifact is a mystery that makes little to no sense. The man behind the discovery is Patrick Schuurmans. He uncovered the fragment in January of 2023 in Belgium's Limburg province. It was a small piece of a Roman dodecahedron. Although Patrick only found one piece, entire dodecahedrons have been discovered throughout Europe. Historians think they may have been used in Roman magic or as more conventional tools. That said, the function of these alien-like devices has never been officially determined. Let's try to get to the bottom of this mystery. It's going to involve some sleuthing and some speculation, but I think we can manage. The first thing I need you to do is scrutinize the Roman dodecahedron artifact. Take a look at all the little nubs that are attached to its joints. Look at the varying sizes of the holes on its 12 panels. What's the first thing that comes to mind? I think it kind of looks like something that might contain an even more powerful artifact. It looks like a containment device. Now that you've taken a good look, I'll give you all the information I can. The Roman dodecahedrons were crafted in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. About 120 of them have been discovered from the shores of Great Britain to rural Hungary. They also range in size from about 1.5 to 4.5 inches, or 4 to 11 centimeters. Each artifact is made primarily from bronze. None of them appear to do anything though. They don't even emit energy, which is a bummer. Several experts have suggested they could have been used as candlestick holders, and wouldn't that make us feel silly? All this speculating over what could have been a Roman lamp. The one thing researchers keep coming back to is ritual magic. The fragment that was recently found by Patrick may have come from a dodecahedron that was broken on purpose. It may have been shattered in a ritual, perhaps to unleash whatever was trapped inside of it. There are so many guesses as to what the dodecahedron was for. The possibilities are endless. But it must have been something extremely basic and common for the Romans. To not have written anything about it, if they didn't mention it in any text, that means that it's not special, because everyone already knew what they were, right? The Sky Stone. In 1990, Italian scientist Angelo Pittoni found a stone made from oxygen while on a visit to Sierra Leone. A wealthy company had hired him to investigate rich deposits of diamonds, and while studying the region, he was introduced to a mythical rock. A local chief showed Pittoni a cool blue stone with strange white lines on it. He didn't know it yet, but the stone would change his life forever. Before taking the stone, Pittoni was told of the legend attached to it. The chief said long ago, at the beginning of human civilization, the angels were expelled from the heavens. They fell from the sky as stone statues, shattering when they hit the earth. The ancient legend has been told for centuries as a way to explain the abundance of diamonds and minerals in this part of Sierra Leone. Back in Europe, Pittoni took the blue stone to be studied at the Institute of Natural Sciences of Geneva. He was excited to find out what exactly he discovered. He thought it was turquoise, but the stone wasn't turquoise. It was something altogether unknown. The scientific team exposed the stone to acids, but the stone couldn't be damaged. They heated it to a whopping 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and still the composition of the stone didn't change. The consensus soon became that the stone was not of this world. It was just like the legend Pittoni heard in Africa. The stone had come from the stars. The full analysis of the stone only made things more unbelievable. It turned out that 77.17% of the stone was made of pure oxygen. The rest of the stone was carbon, silicon, and calcium. For the chemistry buffs out there, you're likely wondering how oxygen can make up the composition of a stone. You best believe the scientists in Geneva were equally as confused. Multiple laboratories became involved with the rock. It underwent a variety of tests, including plasma spectrometry, gas chromatography, and infrared spectrometry. The beautiful blue stone wasn't made of as much oxygen as researchers originally thought. It was composed mainly of calcium hydroxide, dropping the pure oxygen level down to about 50%. And I haven't even gotten to the most baffling part yet, but trust me, it's worth it. Researchers were able to break a piece of the rock off and crush it, then mix the crushed stone with materials like hexane, acetone, and methylene. This allowed scientists to use ultrasound technology, which detected an organic compound within the stone. There shouldn't have been anything organic in the stone, yet there it was. The organic compound was unknown to science and dated to roughly 55,000 years old. Scientists were unable to identify its chemical composition or its molecular formula. So, this stone came from outer space and contained something living. The living thing had been encased inside the stone for at least 55,000 years. But scientists don't know where the stone came from or what the organic compound was. Maybe this stone is an alien egg hatched by some monstrous beast light years away in a distant galaxy. Or maybe it was dropped from a spaceship that visited Earth in the recent past. Maybe it was a piece of plant material that came from some sort of meteorite. The tribes of Sierra Leone believe the stone to be from a fallen angel, so maybe it was. As for where the Sky Stone is today, nobody has any idea. The story has largely been swept under the rug, partially deleted from the world's databanks. And if the blue rock did contain alien life, somebody is covering it up. The ancient Hindu cell phone. The Sumerian Nokia was a bit of a bust, so now I'm taking you to India to see some truly old cell phones. At the ancient temple Rani Ki Vav, there are statues of people talking on cell phones. There are multiple figures of women, in particular, holding slim rectangular devices next to their ears and mouths. The temple is at least 1,000 years old, yet it clearly depicts people chatting away on their phones. There were no cell phone towers 1,000 years ago. There was nothing that scientists know about today that could have bounced cell signals across India. Cell phones from a millennium ago should be a scientific impossibility, but here they are displayed in all their glory. What about the experts? What do they have to say? Archaeologists claim that the figures are simply holding mirrors. Sure, mirrors existed in India 1,000 years ago. People had ways of looking at their own reflection. It wasn't an impossible technology. Vanity has existed for as long as humans have had eyes and been able to see themselves in puddles. This statue here is looking at a mirror. It has a handle and she's looking directly into it. Clearly the figurine is looking at her reflection. She seems pretty proud of herself too, so good for her. Now back to the statues with the phones. They aren't looking at their reflections. Why would somebody hold a mirror between their ear and their mouth? What do you think's going on here? Let me know in the comments. The Babylonian Tablets. A group of ancient Babylonian tablets have just changed everything scientists know about the history of astronomy. The objects are so incredible that they could force history books to be rewritten. As it turns out, the Babylonians were a lot more advanced than anyone previously realized. But really, did you ever doubt their infinite wisdom? For decades, scientists have been trying to understand how Babylonians understood so much about the stars. You know, since they didn't have telescopes and computer models. It was assumed the Babylonians had come up with arithmetic systems to predict the positions of planets, stars, and other celestial bodies. However, new evidence is being found that Babylonian astronomers had an unprecedented understanding of geometry, and very early on in their civilization, the Babylonians had such sophisticated knowledge of geometry, math, and space that they could track Jupiter with modern precision. This technology was hundreds of years ahead of the rest of the world. This new discovery is all thanks to historian Matthew Ossendriver and 5 very important tablets. Matthew translated the texts of the tablets, which were excavated in the 19th century from Babylonia. The translation showed that Babylonian astronomers had developed a method for understanding motion and speed over time in space. This is strange because the tablets were written over 2,000 years ago. The mathematical formula on the tablets wasn't discovered again until scholars from Oxford and Paris in 1350. So, how did the Sumerians gain this knowledge? Nobody has an answer. All the tablets in the world can be deciphered, but there doesn't seem to be a reliable answer to how the Babylonians learned such advanced secrets. Their math and astronomy were better than that of the Greeks or the Egyptians. Some believe the Babylonians may have possessed sacred knowledge. This knowledge would have been passed down from their ancestors who had an impossible understanding of the stars because maybe they came from the stars. The Nephilims Finger. An impossible finger was discovered in Egypt in 1988. The finger is even more impossible than the one discovered from the Cretaceous period I told you about earlier, mostly because this one supposedly belonged to a mythical creature from the Bible. The finger is allegedly the only surviving piece of a Nephilim. a monstrosity from before the days of the biblical flood. If you've heard this story before, according to multiple sources, including the Bible and the non-canonical Book of Enoch, non-canonical meaning the book was removed from the Bible for being too controversial, giants did walk the earth. In the early days of man, and woman too, God sent a group of angels to watch and protect his creations. These angels were essentially babysitters for humanity. Eve had already eaten the apple and gotten kicked out of Eden, so God wasn't in a very trusting mood. Humans had to be carefully monitored and put to bed at an appropriate hour. As the angels watched over humans, something changed within them. The angels grew sinful in their souls and a little too thirsty for angelic beings. They left their posts, disobeyed God, and took human wives. Their human wives then gave birth to giant monstrosities known as Nephilim. When God saw what happened, he was outraged. Yet again, the humans were causing problems. The angels that started the whole affair were banished deep into the earth, where they will remain locked until the apocalypse. To destroy the Nephilim, which were unnatural and unholy, God sent a flood. And as far as anyone knows, the Nephilim were all killed by the floodwaters. But what if a couple of them miraculously survived, as could be proven by this mysterious finger? Gregor Spory was the man behind the finger's discovery. There are a few different versions of his story, so it's impossible to say which one is true. One account claims that he was a grave robber who found the finger while scouring an undisclosed tomb. Another version is that Gregor was only shown the finger by a cryptic Egyptian man. The Egyptian's family had been protecting the finger for so many centuries that they couldn't remember where it came from. It was 38 centimeters long. Gregor claimed the finger smelled musty. It was partially rotted and the bone was gradually decaying. It looked as real as any finger that Gregor had seen before. Unfortunately for everyone, there is no trace of the finger today. Gregor lost it and nobody has seen it since. The only things that remain now to confirm Gregor's story are these dubious photographs. Do the photos look legit to you? I think it's something special to imagine that a real body part from a real monster could be hiding in Egypt somewhere, protected by a mysterious family, sworn to centuries of secrecy. It's a pretty good story, right? The metal spheres. I'm here today to blow the lid wide open on a case that recently took the world by storm. You may have heard the name Avi Loeb a lot in the news recently. He's the Harvard physicist who uncovered a series of round orb-like artifacts from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. He claimed that the artifacts were from an interstellar meteor, or perhaps the remnants of an alien spacecraft. The results are now in, and apparently Avi Loeb was wrong. A new study from the University of Chicago has discovered exactly what the mysterious orbs are. They are not artifacts from out of this world, but rather the result of industrial pollution. Avi Loeb initially claimed that when the experts analyzed the spherules, as the orbs are known, the composition of the objects was strange. They were supposedly made of elements that the experts had never seen before. This is where the claims of the objects being from a spaceship came from. The scientific community reacted harshly, and now they have proof that Avi was making things up. The new study confirmed the spherules to be fragments of coal ash. More specifically, the chemical composition is consistent with coal fly ash, which is a byproduct of combustion inside coal power plants. Astrophysicist Chris Lintott from Oxford University said that Avi's claims are likely nonsense. In response, Avi has defended himself. Keep in mind this is all happening in real time, so the narrative is changing from day to day. Avi claimed that there is no coal mineralization in the area where the spherules were found. He also said he picked the spherules up using a magnetic sled, which can't pick up coal. According to Avi's tests, the spherules contain far more iron than coal ash. They also contain about 500 times more uranium than rocks discovered on planet Earth. And they contain huge levels of beryllium, which is created by cosmic rays and high energy in space. There is one side of the argument insisting that the tiny spheres of metal came from something that didn't originate in the Milky Way. In other words, an alien vessel. The other side of the argument is trying to play the spheres down by saying they are nothing but coal ash. How are we supposed to know what's true when scientists can't even agree? The Sakara Bird. The Sakara Bird, sometimes called the Sakara Glider, is alleged proof that the ancient Egyptians had access to flight technology. It's an object that defies logic and reason. even though it's only carved from a small piece of sycamore wood. The bird was discovered in 1891. It was stashed in the tomb of Pa di Amun. It dates to roughly 200 BC, 12 decades after Alexander the Great arrived in Egypt. When it was originally found, experts figured it was a cultic object. They believed the bird, painted to resemble a mighty falcon, was used as a representation of Horus. Horus was one of the coolest Egyptian gods, associated with kings, the sun, and the sky. I'd like to take a second to appreciate just how wild speculation can be in the archaeological community. The explanation I just gave you makes sense if you don't question it too much, but it's hardly the only one that's been given. Experts have also suggested that the Sakara Bird may have functioned as a weather vane, an instrument used for showing the direction of the wind. It could have been used as a boomerang or a throwing stick for hunting waterfowl. It also might have been something as simple as a toy for a child. Maybe it was put at the front of a boat like an ornament. Imagine if all this controversy and confusion was over an ancient Egyptian ornament. I just wanted to give an example of how confusing it can be to make sense of a single object. But the reason the bird deserves a spot on today's list of things that shouldn't exist is because it boasts advanced principles of aviation. Egyptian physician Khalil Messiha once suggested that the pharaohs developed the very first aircraft. Others have studied the bird and noticed its uncanny similarities to a modern airplane. On the other hand, mainstream scientists don't believe the bird is anything but a bird. They say it's almost definitely a toy. In 2023, the Institute of Aerospace Technology Bremen conducted a full computational fluid dynamics simulation of the artifact. Pretty impressive stuff. It was the first time such an extensive test had been done. Are you itching to know the results? When I tell you, please don't be too disappointed. The results showed that the bird has too low of a maximum glide ratio. It isn't even good enough to be used as a small model of a hang glider, never mind an aircraft. So it's probably just a bird.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Holy jar. If you want to store food or liquid, you might put it in a jar, but you probably wouldn't use a jar that was full of holes. That would kind of defeat the purpose, right? Well, it seems like the Romans used a jar with holes, but for what? Archaeologists at the Museum of Ontario Archaeology were reconstructing 180 pieces of clay that they'd found in a box that formed into a type of jar dating back 1,800 years. The clay jar they'd made was littered with little holes that were definitely put there for a reason. The jar is about 16 inches tall and had apparently been sitting in the museum's storage for a while. No one is sure where it came from. It is possible that the mysterious container came from Iraq and not from England as originally thought, but when it was reconstructed, the questions only multiplied. There aren't any other objects that were made like this found yet, and pottery experts have several theories. The holes could have been to create a lamp of some sort. Another theory is that since it has holes, perhaps it was meant to hold some sort of live animal, like snakes. Others have said that it could have been used to hold small rodents, which were a popular snack for Romans. They would stuff them with goodies and then roast them. But as this was a popular thing, there have been other containers found that were used for holding these little critters, and they didn't look like this one. So, did it hold mice or rodents alive? Was it a snack jar for when they were already cooked? Was it a cage? A lamp? What do you think? Let me know your guess of what it was for in the comments below. Waman walls. Outside of Cusco, Peru, there is a set of old Inca ruins known as Waman, with a distinctive feature that has impressed researchers for quite a while: its walls. The Waman walls have been the subject of scrutiny ever since a group of Spanish explorers came upon the settlement. They thought that the people who lived there were savages, but this conflicted with the fact that these walls were seemingly impenetrable and displayed an incredible level of architectural prowess. For a supposed group of savages, this engineering demonstrates an educated and structured society. The majority of Waman was built starting in the 13th century, although sections were built starting around the year 1100 by a previous culture. This Inca fortress was made of magnificent structures, at first built with mud and clay, and then replaced with perfectly cut polygonal stone blocks. Some of these blocks are over 13 feet tall and weigh over 100 tons. The Inca brought in about 20,000 laborers to cut and shape these huge blocks of stone using nothing more than other stones and bronze tools to cut them. They were moved using rope, levers, and ramps, and cutting was finished on site. The walls were crafted in 3 separate levels in a kind of zigzag fashion. When these 3 levels are put together, they lock into place. The rock cutting and placement was so precise they did not use mortar, but they would smooth out the stone surface using grinding stones and sand. Even without mortar, these walls stick together and have remained standing for a long time. The walls are about 18 feet high and over 1,000 feet long. The Inca relied simply on a particular method of carving and placement that still eludes researchers to this day. Scientists have tried to replicate the walls in miniature, but have systematically failed. The Inca simply knew something that we don't. Bones in a lake. Around Motala, Sweden, there is a lake where archaeologists recently uncovered some bones of 11 people, 2 of whose skulls were pierced on sticks. Now, even though this is a bit eerie, it's not the strangest thing ever, but what is strange is the fact that the skulls ranged from men to women and even to infants. One of the women's skulls even had bone fragments from another woman's skull inside of it. What was going on around this lake that required this level of gruesomeness? The site where these staked skulls were found is referred to as Canal Jordan, and the skulls have been estimated to be somewhere around 8,000 years old. Human bones were not the only kinds of bones located on site. For instance, there were also loads of animal remains and various tools found, and there were signs that certain areas had ritualistic purpose. Perhaps the skulls could have been used in some kind of religious ceremony. There are a couple of theories to consider. It could have been that the skulls were buried once, dug back up, and then placed on a stake for use in a religious ritual, after which they were placed beneath the lake. It could also be that these were the skulls of the indigenous people's enemies. These people might have put the heads of the enemies on sticks and brought them into battle to strike fear into their enemies' hearts. We'll have to wait for further DNA analysis before we can speculate further, but these skulls definitely have researchers stumped. The Ulbe Swords. The Vikings have a reputation for being fearless and terrifying warriors, and the swords that they made live up to that reputation. The Ulbe Swords, which were crafted by the Vikings, were some of the strongest and most well-constructed swords of all time. Surprisingly, scientists still aren't positive how Vikings could have ever crafted such a sturdy sword. When archaeologists first found these swords, they were stumped. The technology required to make metal this pure wasn't around until 800 years after the Vikings were gone. Recently, researchers found that Ulbe swords might have been made in modern-day Germany. Through performing a chemical analysis on the blades themselves, scientists thought that their metal originated from the Sagerland region of Germany. This makes a little bit of sense. Most of the finest swords in the world were made in Germany, but the way they were made is still a mystery. Warriors constantly had to worry about whether or not their swords would be strong enough not to shatter while blocking enemy attacks. If you had an Ulbe sword, that wasn't an issue. Due to their construction, they were both sturdier and sharper than their competitors. Researchers have speculated that the swords might have been made with techniques similar to those used to craft Damascus steel, but that's an enigma as well. We may never know how these blades came about. Dogu figurines. Scholars have been finding so-called Dogu figurines littered around Japan for quite some time now. Their name comes from the Japanese word dogu, which means clay. They found around 18,000 figures in total, and they vary wildly in age. They found figures that are anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 years old. But since they found some from many different periods in Japanese history, their actual purpose is pretty puzzling. This mystery deepens when you consider the appearance of the figurines themselves. They have an enigmatic and spiritual aura about them. One of the leading ideas as to their purpose is that they are vessels of a certain type connected to the beliefs of the Shinto religion. They're human icons that were intended to store a particular form of useful magic. The Shinto religion is considered the indigenous religion of Japan and is a nature religion that centers on supernatural entities that inhabit all things. But researchers cannot be entirely sure if this is the correct explanation. Although Shinto has been around for a long time, these figurines have arguably been around for longer. Some of them are 10,000 years old. This has led to all kinds of speculation, including the invocation of extraterrestrial forces. These are probably implausible, but it remains true that explaining these figurines in a satisfying manner has proved very difficult for historians. The Bouache Map. French cartographer and map publisher Philippe Bouache created his controversial map of Antarctica during the 18th century. But what's so strange about this map? Many people today claim that it features an accurate representation of the world's most southerly continent before it was covered in ice. And not only that, but that it was created about 100 years before Antarctica was officially discovered. The map's full title, get ready, is in English because I'm not even going to try it in French. Map of the southern lands contained between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Antarctic Pole, where the new discoveries made in 1739 to the south of the Cape of Good Hope may be seen. Catchy title, right? Its publishing date, which was either 1737 or 1739, is the first of many mysteries surrounding the map. Included among Buash's many talents was his work as a theoretical geographer. This field of creative work entailed using a combination of geographic knowledge, academic research, the journals of contemporary explorers, and astronomical information to create new maps. Buash made several accurate predictions, including the existence of the Bering Strait and Alaska, and many consider his map of the southern lands to be a true-to-life depiction of Antarctica's subglacial topography. Some even believe legends that he relied on an ancient map created by alien cartographers or some highly developed prehistoric civilization. The argument is that the continent of Antarctica was known by some advanced ancient civilization before it was rediscovered by modern humans in the 19th century. Somehow, he got his hands on their maps. There are also different ways to interpret his words. He may have indicated that his map was a hypothesis and not copied from some ancient map. Buash was not immune to error, and some of his predictions were wrong, including the existence of a central Antarctic Sea. Plus, there's no way to gauge the accuracy of Buash's map because even today's scientists are unsure what Antarctica looks like beneath the ice. It is also likely that another French explorer reported seeing icebergs during his journey to the south, so Buash drew them there, not knowing that Antarctica existed. That doesn't take away from the fact that he was a pioneer and contributed greatly to the science of cartography. There were also two versions of this map, the first without the landmass and the second with it. Perhaps Buash revised his theory based on what he had heard, or perhaps it is a forgery. While this map of his has created much debate, it has kept these maps alive into the modern day. We're all still talking about it. Al-Nasla monolith. Looking around Saudi Arabia's Taima oasis, you might not guess that Taima has been inhabited for thousands of years. However, the Al-Nasla monolith is a testament to ancient people who inhabited those lands long ago. The area was a popular trade route and was once the home of a Babylonian king. There is a lot of rock art in the area dating back 4,000 years. The ancient rock known as Al-Nasla is a monolithic sandstone block standing on what looks like a pedestal with a clean, straight crack down the middle that looks like it was done by a laser. This is intriguing, and many ask whether or not this was done naturally. There are few explanations as to what could have happened, some of them natural and some of them not so much. Much of the area is made up of limestone, sandstone, and shale that create many unusual rock shapes. As for the natural explanations, geologists have hypothesized that the slip between the two rocks formed whenever the ground under the rock moved. It might have been on an old fault line, which makes rock erode more easily. Perhaps some have suggested the perfectly straight crack in between the two rocks was created by a laser. Maybe this laser belonged to an advanced civilization we've never heard of, or maybe it was aliens. It could have been made artificially, but honestly, why bother? There are many examples of extreme shapes in nature, and it looks like this straight fracture is one of those surprises that happens when the Earth moves. The Curse of the Mummy. The curse of the pharaohs had long been spoken about before the discovery of King Tut, and mention of a curse has been found in various tombs. King Tut's tomb, however, had no mention of a curse, but a series of deaths made people's imaginations run wild. In 1922, Howard Carter discovered the tomb of King Tutankhamun, one of the greatest archaeological finds ever. Most tombs had been destroyed and looted before archaeologists got there, but this tomb was undisturbed. Here, Carter and his team found the mummy and sarcophagus of the young pharaoh, along with countless amazing objects, inscriptions, and paintings. As the story of the discovery spread, so did the belief in the curse of the mummy and whoever dared disturb him. The first strange death was that of Carter's benefactor, Lord Carnarvon. He had been bitten by a mosquito, and the bite got infected, and he died soon after. This happened within 5 months of the tomb's opening, And fueled by media speculation across the world, everyone started to get a little scared. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the writer of Sherlock Holmes, suggested that his death was as a result of elemental magic created by King Tut's priests. Following Carnarvon's death, there were another 10 deaths, including that of Howard Carter in 1939 from Hodgkin's disease, that had been linked with the curse of the pharaohs. Some died because of mysterious illnesses, some were assassinated, and there was one case of suicide. Scientists have tried to explain the curse with non-magical means, with some suggesting it could be a result of fungal spores released from ancient tombs. Some ancient mummies have dangerous species of mold, and tomb walls could hold bacteria known to attack the respiratory system. However, considering the amount of people who entered the tomb, most went on to live perfectly healthy and long lives. Roman head in Mexico. This terracotta head was first uncovered in the Toluca Valley near Mexico City. Officially called the Tecajicalixtlahuaca head, try to say that 3 times fast. At first glance, you might not think much of it. It's just a terracotta sculpture of a head, right? True, but experts are stumped because this head looks just like many artifacts made by the Romans. But how would a Roman artifact end up in a grave in Mexico? Excavated in 1933, the grave was found 3 floors below a pyramid along with offerings. Archaeologists found all kinds of precious stones, bones, shells, pottery, and other goodies dating back to the late 1400s. Among the artifacts was this strange head. The main archaeologist, José García Pellón, decided not to tell anyone about the Roman head, probably since other researchers would not take a discovery like that seriously. So while the grave was excavated in 1933, he didn't say anything until 1960. This then led to much debate about the origin of the terracotta head. Some experts think it's fake, but others support it. Could it have been imported from Europe? Could the Vikings have brought it? Or could the Romans have actually traveled to the Americas at some point? There are suspicions that the Romans may have traveled to the Americas, but there is very little evidence. In 2001, 2 researchers who were fascinated by the artifact decided to dig deeper to solve the mystery. The Roman head was confirmed authentic by specialists in Rome and dated it back to the 2nd century. However, there is very little information available about the context of the archaeological site in Mexico, so there is no way to tell the story of how it got there. We'll just have to wait and see if further information becomes available. Knightly sword with inscription. In 1825, archaeologists uncovered a sword from the River Witham in Lincolnshire, UK. This sword, pulled from the river, reminiscent of legend, had a strange inscription along the side made with gold inlay that reads something quite indecipherable. Dating back to the 13th century, to this day no one has been able to come up with a definitive translation of this strange message. You can go see the sword for yourself at the British Library. Through intensive archaeological analysis, experts have determined that the sword was probably constructed somewhere in Germany. The sword is made of steel with a hilt shaped like a cross, perhaps used during the Crusades. The language used to make the 18-letter word is unknown, but the British Museum is on the hunt to crack this elusive code, asking the public for help. Researchers from several universities have said that swords with these types of inscriptions were all the rage in 13th century Europe. Pre-Christian tribes used to inscribe runes onto their weapons to endow the item with magical powers, so it is possible the tradition continued into Christian times with inscriptions to call for protection during battle. But the inscription on this sword is still a mystery, and may have been extremely personal to the bearer of the sword, and something quite obvious to him, and quite the enigma for us. Hamea. Hamea is a dwarf planet that orbits in the Kuiper Belt past Neptune. It is about the same size as Pluto and is one of the fastest rotating objects in our entire solar system. A day on Hamea lasts a mere 4 Earth hours, and it is rotating so fast that it's not really a perfect sphere. It's getting distorted and oblong, more like an American football than a soccer ball. It has 2 known moons, and besides all that, it has even more going on. You might think that Hamea couldn't get any weirder, but you'd be wrong. We just keep finding out more puzzling facts about it. In 2017, astronomers were observing Hamea and observed it pass in front of a star. When this happened, they saw something they'd never seen before. Hamea has rings around it. They still don't know how this happened, but the rings probably formed a long time ago when Hamea collided with something else. But it does make it the first confirmed object within the Kuiper Belt to have rings around it. The Kuiper Belt is a strange place, and knowing that Hamea is a part of it only makes it more intriguing. There are a ton of icy objects orbiting our sun in the Kuiper Belt, which has been around for some 4.5 billion years. Supposedly, it was one of the first things to form whenever our solar system came into being. These objects are often referred to as Plutoids. There are probably more of them, and scientists are keeping an eye out. Coventry cubes. Just earlier this year, a man and his children went magnet fishing in the River Sow, which is in Coventry, England. Magnet fishing is an interesting pastime where one throws a magnet into a body of water and sees what they pull out. And this family's haul didn't disappoint. They unearthed around 60 incredibly detailed, tiny silver-colored lead cubes with numerical inscriptions. But no one knows how they got there. But since they were found, the internet has been on the hunt to uncover their original use. One Redditor saw these cubes and identified them as a fortune-telling token, often used with a type of Hindu prayer. The Hindus subscribe to a particular astrological picture of the world, where the planets in our universe are linked to elements on Earth. For the Hindus, lead is associated with Rahu, which is a part of the orbit of the moon. These cubes are inscribed with strange squares. It's like an ancient version of a Microsoft Excel document. This might correspond to the same kind of sacred geometry to find use in prayer. This indicates that they could have been used to summon up the power of Rahu for its protection. At one point, the father even returned to the site and found a silver coin in the same spot. However, no one is sure why these cubes and the coin were in the River Sow. Dating lead artifacts is hard, and these have yet to receive a satisfying analysis. So until more information comes out, we'll just have to wait and see. Gada. Have you ever seen a Gada? It's kind of like a mixture between a mace and a mallet, although I'm not quite sure how I'd use one in battle. But it has a pretty rich history in Indian mythology, and because of that, there's actually many people in India who specialize in fighting with these weapons. For one thing, it's still used in Silat, which is a particular kind of martial art that's practiced throughout different parts of Asia. But who used the Gada in battle? In Indian mythology, the Gada is the chief weapon wielded by the god Hanuman. Hanuman is one of the main characters from the epic Ramayana, but he features in many other places within Hindu mythology. In fact, Hanuman is worshipped all throughout the world by Silat practitioners. In particular, wrestlers throughout southeastern Asia look to him for strength. But he's not the only one who carries a Gada. In fact, Vishnu carried one, and it's named Kaumodaki. Due to its placement within the Hindu tradition, it's earned a role as one of the main pieces of training equipment that people within the religion use. Sometimes people hold 1 or 2 Gada at a time and train themselves by swinging them before and behind them, which helps to increase the level of grip that one can endure. It's also a really good shoulder workout. So if you're looking for a meaningful addition to your workout routine, the Gada might be for you. VulgoGrad discs. In 2015, a group of amateur investigators came upon a remarkable discovery in Volgograd, Russia, about a dozen gigantic stone discs that appeared to look like big, rocky UFOs. This discovery would be strange enough on its own if it weren't for what they claim to find inside of the rocks: tungsten. Tungsten is one of the toughest naturally occurring metals, and because of that, the military uses it a lot in their technology. They have no idea where these discs came from or what they might have been used for. Of course, given their strange UFO-like shapes, conspiracy theorists have had a field day. Consider Scott Waring from the conspiracy outfit UFO Sightings Daily. He claims that these stones are definitive proof that aliens are out there. Why would this military metal be found in a stone that appears to have been made with clear, intelligent intent? Other UFO people have claimed that these stones are about 1 million years old. Perhaps they were used to attack Mars, but had to make a crash landing on Earth. These theories are fun, but unlikely. The stones are currently being studied by the folks at the Zhirinovsky Museum, where they hope to gain further information concerning these stones' age and constitution. They may not have even been made by humans at all. Erosion might have done the trick. It'll take more research to know for sure, but these stones are definitely evocative. Tabbys Star. Tabbys Star is perhaps the most mysterious star that humanity has ever discovered. Estimates place it at around 1,470 light-years away from our planet, and ever since we first discovered it, it's displayed strange behavior. The light emitted from the star fluctuates wildly, sometimes dimming its brightness up to 22%, and without any clear pattern. But to this day, there's still not an explanation that's received a satisfying scientific consensus. And when science fails, that's when people start invoking aliens. Some scientists initially suggested that orbiting planets could cause the dimming, but this would happen with regularity and wouldn't cause a 22% reduction. It also seems like the brightness has faded a little bit over time. So could it be aliens? Probably not. Certain wavelengths of light are more occluded than others, and that wouldn't happen if there were some sort of alien structure located on or around the star. This has led scientists to what they think is the best explanation: large amounts of dust and comets orbiting the star, likely coming from exomoons. An exomoon is a chunk of debris from a planet that sheds large amounts of dust as it revolves around the star. It'll take a long time for the dust to evaporate completely, and it would probably happen with a great degree of irregularity. It could explain the long-term fading as well, but scientists still need more data to really confirm this hypothesis. Kensington Runestone. The Kensington Runestone is one of the most elusive archaeological artifacts in the world. It's a monster slab made out of greywacke, a type of rudimentary sandstone. Weighing in at around 202 pounds, this artifact was allegedly discovered by one Olaf Oman, an immigrant from Sweden, in 1898. He claimed that he found it in Solem, Minnesota, clutched in the roots of an aspen tree. The writing on the stone appears to indicate that there were Scandinavians present in the area sometime in the 1300s. Is it possible that Vikings could have been in the area at the time? The Runestone Museum, which houses this famous stone, says that the runestone has led researchers from around the world and across the centuries on an exhaustive quest to explain how a runic artifact, dated 1362, could show up in North America. The artifact is definitely unusual. However, not everyone agrees as to its authenticity. To its endorsers, it's stunning confirmation that Vikings explored the Americas, but to others, it's just an old rock with some fake writing on it. For one thing, the story that the inscriptions tell doesn't seem all that credible. There is no record of an expedition, after all. Also, the runes on the stone might not be entirely legitimate. However, some analyses suggest the stone is indeed older than 200 years. However, there is one factor that doesn't seem to get a lot of attention. Olaf Oman, although from Scandinavia, wasn't an expert in Nordic runes or anything like that. He did have friends who might have known about ancient runes, but this has never been confirmed. And the debate rages on. Some people think that the runes are real, others think they are not. But it's been an enduring debate, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stop anytime soon. Thanks for watching! What do you think is the most mysterious object? Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you next time!